Hello, and welcome back to the Skiff Travel Podcast. I'm Skiff's editor-in-chief, Sarah Kopit, here as always with our intrepid head of research, Seth Borko. Hey, Seth, how you doing?
Hey, Sarah. Great. How are you doing?
Good, good. So today we are going to dip our toes into the world of travel points and miles. And I think it's safe to say that loyalty is one of the areas that the travel industry does better than almost any other business. Airlines pioneered that field in the early 80s, and now travel loyalty has grown up into a sprawling, complex, and very, very lucrative landscape. Increasingly, credit cards are at the heart of the travel loyalty ecosystem. And Skift Research just published a new report on the rise of credit card companies in online travel. Be sure to check it out. And as our research team writes, that today banks are shifting from facilitating other brands' loyalty programs to launching their own competing plans. Many have even built their own booking platforms, which Skift Research believes is rapidly capturing market share. So points, miles, and credit cards, oh my, we are not in Kansas anymore. And to guide us through this new world of loyalty, we have an amazing guest joining us on the podcast today. We are so excited to welcome Tiffany Funk, co-founder and president of Point.me. Hey, Tiffany, how you doing?
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. So before we get started, this is our perennial prompt to please remember to send us any questions or comments that you have to podcasts@skift.com. And please don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. It helps us get the word out about the Skift Travel Podcast. So, Tiffany, I'll admit I am a bit of a Luddite when it comes to travel points. I am not that person. I'd never redeem them. I'm sure I have them. I don't know where they are. I don't know how to use them. So I feel I really need to get with the program. So please help me. What is Point.me and how did you get into the points game?
I love that. I will say, Sarah, first of all, you are not alone. There are roughly 70 plus million households in the US who are using some kind of a points earning credit card. And billions, if not trillions of dollars worth of those points go unredeemed every year. Yeah. So like you are not alone.
That's me.
I know you seem like that. And like the FOMO is real and everyone on Instagram has like their fairy lights and they're taking business class seats. And you're like, but I just have my points that I can never use. You represent the majority of people here, Sarah, for sure. Like so many people have points. Nobody really knows how to use them. And that's really the background for Point.me. I've been in the loyalty space for a really long time, had the privilege of working with Ben Schloppig at 1 Mile at a Time for over a decade. And the amazing thing about that space and being at the forefront when you're doing digital publishing, as you all have probably noticed, you get to do the deep dives and have the conversations with the issuers and like the financial institutions. And here's what we're trying to do with points. And you talk to the airline loyalty programs and it's, well, here are the metrics that we're trying to move with our loyalty programs. And then you have that front row seat to the actual consumer who's like, well, I'm getting none of that. Right. And increasingly and more you're doing this and we've done consulting and things like that. But you see that like the gap between those brand promises and what a consumer feels like they're getting, it's just a canyon. And it's a canyon that was big enough to fit a company. And so that's really with Point.me. It's like everyone has points. No one knows how to use them. And you have these loyalty programs that are older than me, or these financial institutions where American Express has offered membership rewards longer than I've been alive, but didn't have that mechanism to tell a cardholder, hey, you should transfer these points on this day to take this flight. And here's which one of our 12 partners makes the most sense for you in this trip. So really building that connective fiber and that glue in the ecosystem is what we're trying to do.
So I love that mission, and certainly I feel a lot of what you just said. I mean, loyalty is just such a big topic for the travel industry. And like you said, you've had a front row seat to so much of it. You've built in a company inside the canyon of it, so to speak. So how is travel loyalty evolving? Why do you think I guess here's my question. You said some of these plans are older than you, they're older than me. Why has it been such an enduring thing? Why are they still sticking around? And where are they going? What's the evolution you're seeing most recently?
Oh my gosh, I love that. I think, the concept of loyalty is not something that came about in the 80s, right? Like these airline loyalty programs sort of started in the late 70s, early 80s as part of deregulation. But the general idea of you show an affinity to our brand or you shop here consistently, whether it's a general store or an airline or a coffee shop, and like we do a little more for each other, right? Like that's pretty intrinsic to the mercantile system. And so, I think for airlines, they said, okay, well, in this deregulation environment, we're no longer selling first class seats the way that we used to. But how do we incentivize corporate travel buyers to still fly our airline, when they can't buy first class or we're a different competitive landscape? So ultimately, when it comes to airlines, like the point of a loyalty program is to give them a competitive advantage inside the space. And like what that competitive advantage looks like is going to evolve based off of the needs of the airline that is the parent company for these loyalty programs. So in the 80s, it was we need to get business travelers buying our tickets, and we're going to incent that by offering them first class seats. Right now, it looks like we want people to be using our co-branded credit card because we're making a decent return on the exchange fee when Americans are going about their normal consumer lives, and we want to be part of that transaction, and that's what's going to drive profit for us as a company. So it's this interesting continuum, and what loyalty does is it allows airlines or whoever else to pull on these different levers and really maximize opportunities in the market.
It is remarkable that it has remained. I mean, I know it's not truly miles for miles anymore, but it is remarkable that miles has remained the currency though for 50 years.
In ways, I mean, you're seeing some programs get away from it. American Advantage has really leaned into having their loyalty points, and they're using that language to really emphasize the off-flight activities that you can do, right? Like, outside of those button seat miles. But like, hey, you can earn loyalty points when you're shopping. You can earn loyalty points, with your savings account. And just trying to emphasize, again, it's all about what consumer behavior are you trying to drive, and like what is the give and take there.
I think in my own life, the biggest bang for my buck, and I actually really like it, that I get from my own, like, again, very limited use of points is a free checked bag. That's what I love. I mean, that's like, I guess it's more of a status thing than a points thing. But I'm curious, Tiffany, as an expert in this field, what is the best points redemption story that you personally have? Like, have you flown first class to, Japan
Yes,
for like
multiple times
nothing?
with like my whole family. In
Yeah,
fact, we took 7 of us to Thailand for Christmas one year, and everybody flew first class.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Tell me how, please.
Well, it's leveraging these points and being opportunistic, and it's interesting because there's these two-pronged things. There's like what you're talking about, Sarah, of like the free checked bag is what I care about, and that is available now with pretty much every U.S. airline if you get their co-branded credit card. In some cases, even the credit card that has no annual fees. Like, you should get that. You should get that card. Should you be spending money on that card? Maybe not.
Right.
Because, right, like that card, and I'm not going to pick on anybody because they're all sort of, let's say they're all equal. That card is giving you like 3 times points on that airline when you buy airfare on that airline, and then like 1 times points on everything else. So, but how much are you really spending on airline tickets in a year? A couple $1,000s maybe for a family, and then you're getting 1 times points on restaurants with that card, versus you could get a card that gives you 4 times points on restaurants, and you can then transfer those points to an airline. So that's the first place I like to start. Like, most people have the wrong credit card for what they want to accomplish with their travel. So it's like, how do you have enough points to take a whole family of 7 to Japan in first class? Well, to Thailand, but via Japan. And it's 2-pronged. One, like, you have to be maximizing your spending and really making sure that you're earning the points to match up with what you want to do, and thinking about that goal setting just like you would anything else in life, right? Here's the goal I'm trying to accomplish. Well, but it's like, I think so much about miles and points. Like if you can plan a Thanksgiving dinner, you can totally get more out of your miles and points, right? And it's like, okay, dinner is going to be at what time? So the turkey has to go in at what time? So who's in charge of side dishes? Like it's just breaking that apart. And Point Me can help with this. There's lots of resources out there to break that apart. But that first step is like, what do you actually want to do with your points? And if you don't know that, it becomes impossible to use them. And you just like, you have all these points that you don't know what to do with.
Well, I mean, I actually had a follow-up question on that topic there, because your point about like, to your point, oh my God, there's too much to do.
We can do this all day.
There's too much. Cut into the chase, not get into the point. But cut in.
I'm gonna have to mute myself. Okay, come on, go ahead.
All right, look, but you're right. That people have all these things. They're sitting around. There's been this explosion of points media, of subreddits. There's like 3 different credit card subreddits at minimum. Like there's points media. You mentioned, 1 mile at a time. There's points guy. We're not going to be too specific. There's a ton of them out there. And you're saying, look, if you can plan a Thanksgiving dinner, you can do this. I worry that some of these are very misleading because I see that marketing out there, and especially like even like the brands themselves. Amex loves to advertise a nice first class cabin to Japan, and I got an Amex card, and I said, me and my fiance, we're gonna go to Japan. We're gonna do it first class, and we're gonna do it with this. I'm gonna put all my spend, blah blah blah, do it all right. And then it turns out ANA only releases 1 first class seat to its partners, and it's pretty much impossible. It's like can't be done. You have to do some. I'm not trying to get into specifics. I'm not trying to call out any airlines or anything like that. I just think that like I worry that there is a disconnect now between there's the people who just have points and don't do anything. Then there's the people who are super savvy, and I feel like there's this middle ground of people who want to be savvy but are struggling, have been told that they can be point savvy but struggle to do so. Like, do you worry about a backlash or like peak points from that kind of? I don't know. Do you get what I'm saying by that though?
Yeah, I do. I'm so glad you brought this up because it's interesting. Like, there's this really interesting like gatekeeping behavior that has always been in the frequent flyer community. Like, I came up flyer talk back in the day, a pretty hostile environment. And if you ask anybody in that space, they're like, bloggers ruined everything. And like, they're maybe not wrong. But, and now you have, the bloggers who are like, well, the Instagrammers are ruining everything. And like, they're also not really wrong. And then the Instagrammers are like, well, it's really the people in the subreddit who are ruining everything and like creating this backlash. And like, this is one of the things that I'm so excited about with what we've been able to do with Point Me is like, let's cut through the noise. Even with a free account, we show people like, here's what other people are actually finding for flights. So if you're in Boston and you just want to go to a beach because it's cold, like here are the actual prices that actual humans are paying with their actual points. And like, it's not sponsored content. No one's getting paid to promote, this cabin. And you can just see like, okay, wow, I would not have thought that it was cheaper to go to Croatia than to go to the Caribbean. But turns out like there's some great points opportunities there. So I love that like infusion of reality that we're able to share by surfacing like, here's what real people are searching and finding. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be niche affinity communities. This is not just with travel or just with points. Like this is for everything, right? This is for your robot vacuum where there are people who are getting like way more out of the product. And like, then they're the ones who are the promoters and being the enthusiasts about it. But the example that you gave of the ANA first class, I really love because that has been something that is just like, it is so sexy for social media. Because, and for people who are like Sarah, who feel like we're speaking in a foreign language, I will say that basically what we're talking about is a super, super narrow edge case. And it's like, this is a needle in the haystack kind of opportunity. And like, yes, it is theoretically possible. Yes, people have done it. But this combination of certain product, certain windows, and certain price that is quite frankly not something that most people are going to be doing. And it's great if you are, and I have been this person, if you are booking on your way to the airport, then like, yeah, you can get that flight for that price. But if you are like, I need to leave the day after my wedding to go on my honeymoon and I only have so much PTO, like this is not a redemption for you.
Right.
I worry that that's what the brands themselves are advertising. When I watch it, when I get the mail or whatever, that's what United wants me to think that I can do. When in reality, I can either go at a random time to Japan or get a great flight to Florida, maybe, but.
Yeah. Well, but United wants you to fly on Polaris. which is a wonderful business class experience and like great bedding. And like they do a really nice job of it. And like to United's credit, they make a ton of seats available with points. And they were one of our top programs when we went through and did a deep dive analysis last year of, what are the best loyalty programs for normal people to really focus on and participate in, because like they make seats available and they have dynamic pricing, which the frequent flyer community hates. Subreddits hate because you can't gamify it. But instead, they're doing a market-based thing. They're saying, look, like if you want to travel on these dates, when we can sell most of these business class tickets, we will still make a seat available for points. It's just going to be more points. And they take that approach of like, at a certain price point, we will accommodate any lack of flexibility that you have, and you get to use your points. And if you look at it in comparison to the cash prices, you're still doing better than in your credit card portal. If you go and redeem if you've got like a Chase Sapphire Reserve, right, and you're getting 1.5 cents back if you redeem for points through their portal, even some of these more expensive redemptions, and if you guys aren't watching the recording, I'm making air quotes here, because like who defines expensive? It's like, well, this is the flight that I wanted to take and it's nonstop on the date I wanted to go. And like, yes, it's 200,000 points for business class, but I have them and I've structured my points earning to it, knowing that that's how many points I'm going to need. It just changes the whole conversation. So that's why I try and get back to like, you don't need to know everything about miles and points. You don't need to care about like these phenomenal potential redemptions. It's more like, what do you want to do? What's it going to cost? Let's work on making sure you've got the points to be able to execute on that vision.
What do you feel like most consumers actually want from their loyalty program? Like, do they want first class seats? Do they want business class seats? Like, what is it that they want?
This is such a misnomer. And I think to Seth's point, people, if you only look on Instagram, you think that everyone wants to fly international first class like every day. But when we talk to people and we talk to customers, like we really focus on everyone can travel better. Like points help you travel better. And that can look like things like, to your earlier point, Sarah, it means that I can have a free checked bag for everyone in my family. And wow, my airport experience is so much better when I'm not wrangling 5 children and their carry-ons to save that $150 each way. Like that's significant. That's real value for a family. So I think it's this whole spectrum of human experiences. Some people want to use their points as a financial buffer. So if they've got a sick family member or they're a small business owner and there's an opportunity where having that in-person meeting is going to mean the difference between making their year or not, they can not have to worry about the cost of the flight and just get there for that moment. Like that is where we see people having those really impactful uses of points. Of course, honeymoons, of course, anniversary trips, of course, glam. Like people aspire to that, but what they really want is just that core value of I got something out of this. I said that very authoritatively because I feel very strongly about it. That like it's sometimes easy to get distracted about like lie flat seats, but like some people just want to go to see grandma over spring break and not have it cost $2,500 a person for economy.
I get it. I really do. You have this partnership with American Express. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works? I guess both why, you kind of talked about a little bit why Amex would want to work with you, but why they would want to work with you and what you get out of the partnership as well.
Yeah. So I love this. So this is one of the things that I think it's so smart of American Express, and not just saying that because they're partners, but they also like first.
They're geniuses. We love them, but
right. They're amazing, and they are, especially everybody on the Point Me team. But American Express first came up with this membership rewards concept, and this, hey, you can use your credit card points not just for cash back, but like we can transfer them to our partners. In the 80s, super innovative, and nobody else really did that in a meaningful way until the early aughts. I mean, Diners Club did something, but like nothing really got traction until Chase did Ultimate Rewards, which was like 2010, 2011. And so it's interesting because while we've had other banks come in that are like more technical and trying to drive things, I think Amex has that good perspective that comes with experience, right? And being able to take the long view of these things and being able to say, hey, like we have these transfer partners. It's a really cool part of the program. During 2020, you saw a lot of these other financial institutions give you other ways to redeem your points. You could get statement credits or at hardware stores or doing other things. And Amex held pretty solid. And they said, no, like membership rewards means travel. And we know that people are going to want to travel. And so we are instead going to invest in doing something that is going to help people travel once that's appropriate again. And so a little bit of it was that and the timing of that. Like we know people are going to want to travel. We want to be able to give them something that no one else is really doing.
Yeah, and let me ask you a question. And I love, Tiffany, how you do. I mean, you're a consumer facing startup and you frame things a lot from the consumer point of view. Put it on your industry hat for a second. What do you make of the rise of these credit card companies? Because you're right, membership rewards been around forever. Now you've got Ultimate Rewards. I think we just did some research. I think credit card companies spent like $19 billion buying miles from just 4 airlines. So they're effectively have bought their way into this market. If you ran an airline, is this something you'd be concerned about? Like, do you think that they're a threat? Also, like they're building their own loyalty programs. Like, are customers more loyal to their credit cards than to their airlines? That's the question.
Oh, not at all. I would not be concerned about that if I ran an airline. 1% of US GDP is getting put on a co-branded Amex and Delta SkyMiles credit card, which I think is too high. I think that probably most of those people are using the wrong credit card. Like there's a different American Express product that would probably serve you better. But at the end of the day, it's an accounting exercise, right? If you are directly purchasing the miles as part of a co-brand relationship, which the co-brand relationships are lucrative for everyone involved, like everyone wins there. Consumers, banks, airlines, everybody's winning there. But then also like, okay, if you are instead putting this on a membership rewards earning card or an ultimate rewards earning card, and then the airline is later buying miles from me as an airline, that's still great for me. Like, right? That's top line revenue for me as an airline. And I get to set the price. I get to set the capacity. I get to set the redemption terms. Like you are buying my monopoly money.
Yeah, but well, I obviously agree. It's great. If someone came and wrote me a check for $1 billion, I would certainly accept it. But maybe I'm just a Debbie Downer here. I mean, tell me, I'm supposed to be a research analyst. I'm supposed to be a little bit of a skeptic, but like, I worry that customers are over gamifying these systems. If I was Marriott, and Marriott has we talk mostly about airlines, but Marriott has Bonvoy. It's huge, 200 million members. Delta, I'd be worried that people are don't really have an affinity for their brand. They're not really loyal to their brand. And then as soon as something shakes up, if I don't renew my credit card, I'm no longer a loyal Delta or United flyer. Like, is that a concern?
I mean, I think this is part of like, we're not talking about a marriage here. We are talking about financial transactions. And so like, keep in mind, like, why does a loyalty program exist? A loyalty program exists to drive top line revenue for the parent company. So like, what are your levers? And like the levers evolve. Like after 9/11, the levers that these airline loyalty programs used were stack trips. The more flights you take, we will do like exponential rewards for you. And so they change things like, okay, if you fly 10 segments, you'll earn 10 times miles, and just like those different things that they've done. Like if there's a brand affinity problem, that's like a different department in some ways, right? If it's, or it's like, I might say, hey, I have no affinity for this brand, but their footprint matches my travel needs. And so like, I'll go ahead and get their credit card. And now I'm using their credit card at the grocery store. And again, it's top line revenue. So it's a little like, yes, I talk about this from the consumer perspective, but the enterprise and the business perspective is you've just got to put your most capitalist mindset on it. And then it all makes sense because it's just math.
So how's it working out for your business? Like how much of your customer base is now Amex versus like direct point nerds like Seth? Do a lot of Amex users log on to your site?
We do. So we have a lot of people who will use that like point.me/Amex, and it's a limited complimentary version of our site that's available to Amex cardholders. So any Amex cardholder, you can go there and you can leverage that. And it's a great benefit that comes with these cards you're already paying for. And it is a healthy but overall small percentage of the Point Me business. We have a lot more everyday consumers who maybe don't have any points earning cards yet, but they're starting to look and see like, well, what cards maybe should I get? Because they're doing that free exploration I want to travel. I don't know where to start. I don't want to learn this. I don't want to read 30,000 blog posts or watch 500 YouTube articles. And so I'm looking for something that will show me, like, what are the points that I need to take the trips I actually want to take.
All right, so let's go to a break right now, and we will come back on the other side with more from Tiffany about points.
Welcome back to the Skiff Travel Podcast. If you're just joining us, we are still talking to Tiffany Funk, the founder and president of Point.me, about loyalty points, credit cards, all things points. We're having a wonderful conversation. Tiffany's a wonderful guest, and I want to ask about. I got to bring us the mood down a little bit. I want to ask about politics, about Congress, and I'm sorry for doing this. There's been some discussion about capping credit card interchange fees. I wonder what your take on that is. Like, would that be a big threat to the points ecosystem?
I love that you said you're going to bring the mood down. And I just feel like in the current environment, like that's not even a political question. Like that's like a 2024 controversy.
yeah. My real hard-hitting politics question: credit card interchange fees. That's how politics is supposed to be. We're supposed to care about. They're not supposed to care about existential stuff in politics.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Okay. So here is my hot take on that. Things could change. We're in like a really weird current moment. But prior to like the last 2 months, I would have said with complete confidence that this is something that is never going to have legs in the US. And I still would say with like a high degree of confidence. And the reason why is super cynical. I told Seth and Sarah before we started, my undergraduate degree is in political science and my master's is in post-nationalist conflict resolution. So I say this with like some context. Credit card regulation and interchange is such a tremendous thing to fundraise off of for politicians that's why it comes up. You see it come up every election cycle in a different sort of format or a different mode. In 2024, it was like hands off my points. But if you remember in 2020, like Elizabeth Warren had something in her primary campaign. Like there's always somebody who is really leveraging this to fund their reelection campaign. And like, I really feel that it's such a good fundraising lever that no one is going to like risk the fundraising opportunity by actually legislating on it.
Interesting. Okay. So our points in the US are safe for now. Those rules are passed in Europe though, right?
Yeah, they're capped in different places. I mean, different countries have different rules on interchange fees. And I think it's a good segue. Like, would this kill the points ecosystem? I mean, no. Like, the UK has caps on interchange fees, and their credit cards aren't as lucrative as cards in the US. But, like, there's still a robust environment there. Australia, the same thing.
Are Europeans as much point fanatics as Americans are? I don't actually. Are Asian and European customers as much point maniacs?
Well, these countries aren't monoliths. So there's definitely a range of experiences. But I would say, like, continental Europe, the status is considered a much bigger lever than the points, is generally the experience that I have. And you see that with the different ways that programs are structured and like their elite tiers and what they give you access to. I mean, Lufthansa's program with miles and more is terrible for points earning and points redemption. I mean, for points redemption, it's not awful. They do some cool things for families and things like that and some availability. But like the status and the things that they do for their very frequent flyers, you can it's a different cultural approach to like, what does it mean to be loyal to an airline? What it means to be loyal to an airline is that we're going to have a car meet you, at the gate, because a lot of these European airports have bus gates. So we'll have a car meet you and we'll take you to your next flight so you don't have to deal with the bus. Like that's what loyalty means, in different markets.
So we've seen some here at Skift. We write about it whenever it happens. There have been just, I don't know what you want to call it, outrage, terror, horror, when some of these airlines have kind of devalued or changed their point system. I mean, it's like rioting in the streets, depending upon who you are. Do you think that like have the airlines learned their lesson here that like it's just not okay with consumers, or are we going to see more of it?
This is such an interesting question. This is going to make me very unpopular with many a blog reader and probably many of my friends. Because again, like the most skeptical answer is like they've learned their lesson, which is that like your outrage fizzles in 48 hours. And then you're going to go back on to like doing your thing. But this is the thing, like loyalty is designed to make us as consumers act a little irrationally, right? Like everything about loyalty and brand, like that's the intention. So you have to expect a little bit of an irrational response as well to any of the changes. Like you are creating this emotional connection with consumers and you're using that to drive revenue. And so like, you should anticipate that they will react very emotionally to any changes. And I think good programs bake that in to their planning, and they have honest conversations when they look at how they roll out changes, and they do that in a really effective way. Airlines have devalued. It's interesting because it's like you've devalued, but also they've invested in the product. So you're getting a better product for that higher price. And that's something that I think is important to call out. Like, you know, when I first started working in this space, Lufthansa First Class was a 16-seat recliner style experience for transatlantic flights. And it looked like an Alaska plane, right? Like nothing nice, no shade on Alaska, but like no one's aspiring to that. It's just a seat. Was a transatlantic bus service. And now like Lufthansa First Class is lie flat seats. It's a separate terminal. Like it's really super nice. And so it seems okay that it's double the points that it was in 2010. It's way more than twice as nice. So I think there's that element of it. And there's also the like, what are the points prices versus what are the perks? And I think the perks are where people get very, very upset because these are things that frankly like don't cost programs much to provide. You're not talking about perishable inventory. You're not talking about like, oh, there's only so many hotel suites to give out. You're talking about like the breakfast benefit. And like, since we've been talking about airlines, but I think hotels, like this is the one where like you have got to get your franchises under control with these breakfast benefits. It's the silliest thing.
Do tell me, I have to ask, what is a breakfast benefit?
It's the deal. So if you spend 100 nights a year in our hotels traveling for work, then, you know, I have some expectation that you say like, I'm a gold or a diamond or a platinum or whatever precious metal, you know, the program uses. You say I get free breakfast for the people in my room. But then you get to the actual property and it's like, well, you actually get like a $15 credit and it's only for 2 adults and not for children. And like, can't be used on beverages. And just like, it gets so awful. And I think that's where people get really mad because like the deal was breakfast. You know, breakfast means at least an entree and a beverage for the people who are registered in my room. And like, why are we squabbling about this? Like, why did I spend 100 nights in your hotels?
Yeah.
You know, this was the promise.
I was at a Choice Hotel over the weekend in Minnesota, and they had a waffle maker, and that's my absolute favorite breakfast to ever see. I get so excited when
it's a really good option.
Flip over waffle maker is there,
right? And it's super consistent. So that's one of the.
It was free.
It's part of the value prop, though, right? And so, like, but if Choice Hotel says, "Well, our breakfast benefit is now going to be wrapped muffins rather than a waffle maker," you're going to feel away. And even more so when people are spending a lot. And I think the other thing that really gets people going are like seat assignments on airplanes and early boarding, right? I got the credit card or I kept that silver status because I get priority boarding. But they don't tell you that priority boarding for a silver status is actually like zone 5 because it's going to be after like wheelchairs, after uniform military, after first class, after all the other elites, after the deadheading pilots. And now like 3/4 of the plane has boarded and you don't have anywhere to put your bag, which is actually all you cared about.
I will never forget. I first earned United Silver. I was in the United hub and they said, now board in 1K. And literally, I kid you not, 100 1K members got up. And it was just like, this is a joke,
for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I must, this is apropos of nothing and nothing about points, but you know that story that, I mean, many of us read in, I don't know, high school or middle school about the study that they did about eye color and, you know, when they assigned the blue-eyed people and the brown-eyed people and you made, you know, gave one, you know, I mean, it's like Nazism and all of that, but I often feel a lot like that with the points. And our producer's probably going nuts right now, and it's like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to like bleep this whole section out and edit her talking about all of this. But I sometimes feel like that when they're doing that with the loyalty members, and everybody gets up and walks into first class. Like, I'm like, the loyalty people are better than the rest of us. Like, it is very emotional.
When we did our loyalty report last year, we looked at like member data, we looked at economic indicators. We looked at what was actually happening, and we're like, okay, the first thing we have to do, we have to separate the points from the status. And I think that like programs who are doing this are getting more traction with their members, and like consumers, you should do this for your sanity. Because anybody who is banked in the US, which is not everybody, but like anybody who is banked can participate in the point side. You can earn points, you can redeem points, you can make individual, independent, educated decisions, or you can use a tool like Point Me to help accelerate that education gap and make it transactional. And then it's not emotional, it's transactional. And then we're all on the same page there and it's fine. The status is different because like if you are, and I mean, I've been in a situation where I was flying hundreds of thousand miles a year, or there was one year where my husband and I got a survey from Starwood, which is now part of Bonvoy. It was like, how many hotel nights did your family spend in hotels? And like, we had 500 room nights between the two of us that year because of our jobs, where we were both traveling literally all the time. And like, I care a lot about the status benefits in that situation because when you're spending that much time on the road, or you're doing that Monday through Thursday consultant grind, I actually want to know that like I can board first and just put my bag up here, because I don't have time to wait for my bag to be lost. I don't have time to deal with baggage claim. Like, I have a really tight schedule. I want to know that I can go into the lounge and take a shower because I'm going right from the airport to a business meeting, and I'm going right from there back to the airport, to get somewhere else. And like when you're doing that grind and you are spending so much with a carrier, like you deserve to be treated well. Like, and that's where that exchange comes from. And that's the area where when programs mess with that the pitchforks come out and sort of like appropriately come out, because it's like, and I think about that when I was spending so much of my life in airports, and all I want is the ability to go to the lounge and like get some cheese and, shower if I need to, and have someone there who will help me rebook my flight if like LaGuardia is shut. Like it's not a lot of things in the grand scheme of things, but they are things that super frequent traveler, like you can't absorb the time impact of, and you're reliant on who feels like a partner in this travel relationship to smooth that out for you. It's different than like, I mean, when you're on your once a year vacation and things get canceled, it is also like very unpleasant. Don't get me wrong, but that exchange is not there. There's not that same like burden of care as I spend more time with you, American Airlines, than I do with my spouse. Right? Which is what happens for very frequent travelers. It's like, how dare you treat me like this? So
let's come into the home stretch of this conversation. And I want to, I guess, two related questions to you. I mean, so Point.me just raised, if I'm not mistaken, a 15 million Series B. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what does that signal for, like, what does that mean for the future of your business? Like, what's the plan for Point.me, and what is that? And the broader question is, what does your success in this space mean for the future of award travel?
The second question is more interesting. Although I'm happy to talk about myself, but part of the reason why we got into this was to change the ecosystem, right? And building that connective fiber across the ecosystem. So I get very excited about what Point Me is able to do and what it signals to the space, in that like everybody can travel better. There is a way to reach these consumers who don't understand points, don't want to understand points, but are, participating in the US economy and thus have points. And it's a little bit of like, you can make the pie bigger with that, right? And so I love that and what it's doing. And what we're seeing in terms of programs getting access to the US market in a way that they struggled with before. But now they've got this great pathway and this channel into being able to surface their inventory to American consumers, right? So if you are Flying Blue, which is the loyalty program for Air France, and KLM has talked about this, like Point Me has accelerated their growth because they're able to say, hey, like you want to go from Chicago to Rome and you wouldn't have gone to Air France. But because you're using like the Point Me tool, whether inside Amex or just directly, you're saying like, wow, I can do Chicago, Paris, Boston, and it's like this many points. And I have those points. I didn't even realize I had those points. And now I can transfer them over from a couple different credit cards. And now I'm on Air France or I'm on KLM. I'm having a great experience and I'm going to think of them next time I go to travel. So just seeing like that market expansion is super interesting and opening the aperture for both travelers and for businesses in bringing all of this together. Like we really do think that there's like win-win-win conditions where you get issuers, programs, consumers all operating together and finding those pockets where like everybody's getting what they want out of this transaction now, rather than it being so siloed. So I think in terms of the ecosystem and what it's doing, like that's great and that's awesome. For Point Me ourselves, we raised the Series B because we wanted to go beyond building. We didn't start this out to be a tool like by nerd for nerds, as much of a nerd as I am about the points and miles space, because it's like there's only so many people to serve there. And like many of these people are already like love you all, but you are very well served by Reddit and blogs and Instagram and TikTok and like all of these people who are doing that and have been doing that. And I've also, been part of that ecosystem. But normal people don't want to do that. And not to be like, you're abnormal if you're really into miles and points. Just other people are like really into house plants and they don't want to take any of their house plant time or budget to learn about travel. They just want to have a great trip. So the Series B money for us is about like accelerating that journey and being able to say like, what can we do to make points more accessible to more people, to help people really understand that you have more spending power than you think. You have these currencies in your wallet and you need to stop treating them like, old currency or like, leftover coins from a trip that you took and you pulled out too much cash. Like, I don't know how to spend this. There's a way to combine them. There's a way to just get so much more out of it and really be able to enable the travel that you want to take.
All right. Well, that is a fantastic place to leave it off here. Tiffany Funk from Point.me. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Always fun and interesting conversation about the wonder that is airline and other loyalty programs. So Tiffany, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And for everybody else, please don't forget, as we say, to send us an email at podcast@skift.com if you have any questions or comments. And like or subscribe where you are listening.
If you want to dive deeper into this topic, Skift Research just released a report on credit cards in travel, a little more on the credit card industry distribution side. And if you're a research subscriber, please check that out, research.skift.com.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week. Thank you for listening to the Skift Travel Podcast. Wherever you're listening, please make sure to subscribe. If you like what you're hearing, rate us 5 stars or leave us a positive review. It really helps get the word out about us, our podcast, and make sure that we can still continue to bring it to you free of charge every week.
If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell as well. That way you'll know every time we have a new episode.